Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I'm so grateful to have you here, sharing in this space of growth, healing, and transformation. If you've already subscribed to Loving Everything, thank you for being a part of this beautiful community. Your support means so much, and together, we're creating a space where love in all its forms can be explored and embraced. As you listen to this episode, if it resonates with you, I invite you to like the video and share it with anyone who might benefit from the insights we're diving into today. These conversations are all about expanding our capacity to love ourselves, each other, and the world around us. And if you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to explore my other episodes where we journey into love's deepest, most unconditional forms. Each one is an invitation to reconnect with the parts of yourself that are waiting to be seen, healed, and loved. So thank you for being here. Let's begin. Hi, Mark.
All right. Hi.
I want to appreciate you for coming today. I really appreciate everything that I had the opportunity to learn from in class.
Sure.
It was a wonderful class. It was one of my favorites.
Thank you.
Loved the material and the breadth of knowledge that you possess. I feel like I've had a lot of people talk about addiction, whether it is, well, I won't say a lot of people, but I've had a number of podcasts now where either someone has spoken about their addiction or I've had other people come in and speak about addiction. Today I wanted to make it a little more personal, as I mentioned to you, because I have a history with addiction. And you started us out in the class with an abstinence paper. And that's why I thought that this would be, very relevant in that regard. Just because everyone's experience of that was very different. And I'm sure that happens in every single class that you have. But specifically to me, it was different because I have removed things out of my life before. And finding the relationship to particular substances in my life, whether that just be honey in my tea or, using marijuana to soothe myself or having a history of, drinking and several, I won't say several, I shouldn't exaggerate, 2 DUIs.
Okay. 2 is several. Yeah.
Two is more than one.
Yep.
I don't want to make it sound worse than it is. But I guess my point is, having that history, I really had another opportunity to once again reflect upon why do I reach for the things that I do. I think that, that's a very valuable experience that a lot of people don't always have the opportunity to do until it's too late.
Yeah.
And they've come to either a crisis in their life or it's gotten so bad that they can't stop or whatever it might be. And I think the reason why it's so important to me, I know I'm doing all of the talking, we will get to you.
It's okay.
The reason why it's so important to me is because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about addiction.
Yeah.
And that's what I found so valuable about your classes, because you validated a lot of what I already know, but also just that's why it's so powerful, I think, for us to speak more and more about it, because I think in general, like I was talking with somebody in my cohort in a previous episode who's in the addiction cohort. And, when I used to drive around Portland several years ago when I first moved here, and then I would go home on my computer and hear, or watch people complain on like Nextdoor about, how this city is just not what it is. And, why aren't we doing more about the homeless population and all of the drug use? And there's just so much misunderstanding with regards to why people are choosing this.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're at the front lines, even more so than I was as a program navigator. I won't say that I hid at my desk. I certainly had to go and do work with the unhoused community, work in shelters, so I certainly was there too, but I'm, slightly removed now that I'm a student sitting up on a hill in a very privileged environment,
Yeah.
So either way, suffice to say, that is why I thought that this would be very valuable, because you have as an educator, as well as, a clinician, you have a very informed perspective that I think not everyone shares.
Sure.
And so, and so I find that really incredible. And so I'll start out by saying that I wanted to nerd out a little bit with you with regards to statistics. There may be some things that I mentioned that maybe weren't covered in your class. So I'm interested to hear in your perspective as well.
Sure.
But as I go through the program, I started out in the addictions cohort. I think I mentioned to you I moved out of it. But I originally got into the addictions cohort because I wanted to get to the bottom of my addiction. And I wanted to get to the bottom of addiction. And maybe can you share, is that also what drew you to the profession as well?
I think it's fair to say that I was curious about why people change and why people get stuck. Just, multiple experiences in my own life, not necessarily substance use, but points of getting stuck myself, watching other people get stuck, and both professionally and personally, just wanting to understand.
Yeah.
And so like you, I went to the grad school and did my program. And I think, as I said there, it was probably the 3 best years of therapy I ever had.
Yeah.
And I think developed what you might call sort of a working theory or understanding, but by no means is it complete.
Well, no. I mean, we can't generalize, but there are definitely contributing factors to why people make this choice, right? And holding compassion for that rather than judgment, rather than coming from a place of judgment. I think we tend as humans to judge things that we don't understand. So I think that's what I'm passionate about is trying to have more people understand.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks who are in recovery and, especially, you hear this from fairly well-known folks, celebrities and others that say, I didn't, when I was a kid, I didn't decide I wanted to be an alcoholic. I didn't want to give myself over to heroin or something like that. And it sort of puts the context of the choice into a sort of a different frame, that it's not a singular choice. It's a whole bunch of choices along the path. And sometimes no choices at all. We had, probably no options and or no capacity to sort of think through what the possibilities might be. And so we just did whatever the next right thing we thought was. And, you really don't, I think, fully comprehend a path that you've taken until you're a ways down it. And you start to experience the consequences or
at the dead end.
or the lack of choices. Yeah, exactly. So, for that reason, I, for one, have lots of compassion for people who get stuck in these areas and really encourage folks, students especially, to also have compassion, because we have a chance to unpack and help the other person unpack whatever that story is, and those points that brought them to where they are and what the options might be for being able to move forward. So, lots of choices both to get in and to get out of addiction.
So, for anyone who's watching or listening, can you briefly give us an overview of what it is that you do?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I currently work with Central City Concern here in Portland, Oregon. So I'm a program manager for a residential treatment facility. And we serve the folks who live on the streets kind of in this downtown inner east area. That's the primary population. It's the folks that really struggle to be able to access services in all sorts of different places for all sorts of different reasons. And so the goal is for us really to provide every opportunity for folks to engage, to choose to engage, to explore what another kind of life might look like, and ultimately to help folks find recovery, find a supportive place to live, find a community, find a path, that works for them, some hope, some meaning, sense of purpose in life. And I'm really delighted to work for this organization. I've been in the field for 17 years. I started with them a couple months ago, and really just am very impressed with the heart and the commitment and the enthusiasm that everybody brings.
They're one of my
this work.
favorites.
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody that works for them is incredible, is incredibly busy and also incredible.
That's my sense too. Absolutely. Yep. It's very true.
Yeah, you guys have your hands full, but you do such good work.
Yep.
Yeah.
You bet.
Yes. Okay. All right. So thank you for that. We're going to start early because we're going to kind of combine. What I'd like to do is kind of combine a little bit of lifespan with what it is that you teach too.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us what the research says about maternal stress during pregnancy and how that impacts fetal brain development and later emotional regulation? What you know.
Sure. I mean, in a very general way. I'm not a specialist in that. But we do know that all sorts of things are transmitted, not just genetically, but epigenetically, from the parents, and particularly from the birthing parent to the young human. The fetus is exposed to all of the different environmental and chemical stressors that the mother is exposed to as well. And those help to kind of shape the experience of the newborn when they emerge into the world. Ideally, we want that experience to be positive and stress-free and, kind of have a nurturing, a nurtured parent that then can sort of continue that nurturing when the child is born. That's not always the case, and sometimes is rarely the case. So different stress hormones, different substances affect the child, the development trajectory in ways that sometimes are super obvious, in terms of different kinds of birth defects or genetic issues. In other ways are not necessarily evident until, the child's development starts to kind of unfold. So there may be behavior things. There may be chronic anxiety or depression. There may be, maybe some underlying neurodiversity that is a challenge for folks to work with that, may have its roots in kind of the uterine environment. I think the other thing I want to say about that, though, is that there's not sort of a one-to-one causation with regard to these things. That we know that, there are certain risks that come with substance use or with chronic stress or anything like that, but that they're not determinative necessarily of the child's path or of the person's growth and development. Oftentimes that information is used as a way to kind of shame the mother or to kind of put stigma on somebody that maybe is already struggling with a lot of stuff. So I want to sort of make sure that that counterbalance is out there too, that, each of us is doing the best we can. And we also want to do our best as a society, particularly as a healthcare providers, to support any pregnant person that is hoping to give birth and to become a parent. So, a lot of ways forward for that, but also a lot that we just need to be aware of.
Yeah. Well, I'll speak from my own experience. I certainly suspected that was the case, but I also had major confirmation in reading statistics about how that can evolve, right?
Yeah.
Or contribute to. And I did some research, by the way, so I'm just going to throw this in.
Sure.
That there are at least, it's from our book actually, 89 genes have been discovered that could have an influence on susceptibility to addiction. And most susceptible individuals have more than one of the genes that affect an individual's susceptibility to alcoholism and other drug addictions.
Yes.
So just from a gene perspective, we're already susceptible.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the one that gets the most attention is the DRD1 allele that creates the dopamine D2 receptor that is correlated with people sort of over-responding to any sort of salient stimulus. One person might just be fine with a single scoop of ice cream, but somebody that has that allele might not be happy until they've had 2, 3, or 4 or 5 scoops.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there are, and I think it's important too to think about the genome, particularly within an individual, not so much as a blueprint for how things kind of develop or get unpacked, but more as a conversation within the cells and among the cells about how development is going to take place. So those genes get turned on or turned off, kind of depending on the environment in which that person grows up, and like you say, from conception onward.
Yes.
But that, we can have certain vulnerabilities that may not even necessarily show themselves until we experience some sort of extreme stressor, and then those will appear.
So during my own pregnancy, I experienced severe trauma and isolation. How might those conditions have shaped my daughter's nervous system and stress responses even before she was born?
Yeah, well, when you've got those stress hormones in your body, particularly the cortisol, which takes a long time to break down, and then of course, the epinephrine and norepinephrine that are putting you into kind of fight or flight mode. Those can communicate to the unborn child that the environment is not safe, in the same way that the mother is feeling those feelings. So that can lead to a kind of a higher baseline. Let's talk about it that way.
Okay.
The possibility of just having more difficulty being able to relax, of feeling a little bit sort of
On edge.
on edge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not being able to pump the brakes.
Right. Yeah. Or needing a little more help in pumping the brakes. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I put down some statistics again, but you already covered it, so it's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So both me and my daughter's nervous system may have developed in a way that expected the world to be unpredictable or threatening, as you were mentioning, making us more vulnerable to dysregulation, fear responses, and behavioral challenges from an early age. And can you speak to, I guess maybe you already kind of are, the idea of fetal programming and how the intrauterine environment contributes to mental health and addiction vulnerability later in life.
Yeah. Well, first, let me just sort of pull back a little bit from some of our assumptions that we might have
Okay.
about development. Human bodies are amazing. The human nervous system is absolutely amazing. We have adapted to situations and environments around the world, really, that other life forms can't inhabit. The same genome that I carry can exist at the South Pole. It can exist in the tropics. It can exist under extreme duress. And it can exist in extreme abundance. Our bodies, our societies, our minds are incredibly flexible. And that's the case also as well for children. Any sort of genetic stressor we experience is a preparation for a potentially difficult environment. It actually preps us for survival. And so many of the things that we think about as being sort of vulnerabilities in one situation might be strengths in another. A child born into a wartime environment will be wired to survive in a way that somebody who's just sort of dropped into the middle of it, without having that experience might not be. So all of which is to say, we need to think about kind of what the adaptation is and what purpose it serves, and what sort of environment that person is just sort of kind of hardwired to participate in. Which is to say that I think for those of us who do have the privilege of living in a fairly stable, supportive environment, it might take a little work for us to appreciate how folks have survived, less stable environments. And not just the choices, but the capacities they've been born with or developed in those situations to be able to get to where they are today. Now, the flip side of that, of course, is if we want to invite somebody into, let's call it the world of recovery, a place where there's a lot more stability, a lot more ability to kind of name my goals and my values and have control over my path going forward. That's going to take time. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to feel wrong physically in the body to be able to get there, in the same way that, if you were to airlift me into the middle of China and just sort of say, figure it out, I'd be on the next plane home. I can't do it, right? Totally different culture, different language, different kind of ways of being in the world that I'm not wired to experience. So that journey of recovery, that invitation to come to the world that we share, that is, ideally a place that's a lot more stable, can feel like a threat to people that have sort of normalized their experience in a traumatic or a stressful environment.
Okay. So
I hope that answered the question. I think I sort of went
That's okay.
around it.
I just don't want you
to
keep repeating yourself. So I'm kind of skipping ahead or looking what I have here. Okay. So from your perspective, in a family that has, let's say, emotional neglect and conditional love, how could that potentially shape an attachment style, and why does that matter in addiction?
Yeah. I I can probably speak from my own experience in that. I mean, I didn't have, like I say, addiction as part of my kind of my own path. My grandfather had a struggle with alcohol. He died 10 years before I was born, and so I'm sort of in the lineage of that, and
Interesting.
that pattern was kind of manifest in our family.
Okay.
I'm happy to say that we all sort of got into recovery together, probably about right about the same time that I started school. So in my late 30s, thereabouts, 15, 20 years ago.
Okay.
And we all did some work to be able to kind of relate to each other a little bit differently. But yeah, growing up, when you've got sort of those unspoken ghosts, those norms or those kind of assumptions about how things are supposed to be compared to how they are, and folks sort of working with their own wounds. It again, it can be difficult to for the child to understand, and so they simply accept and normalize the behavior that they're in. For me, what that meant was that I had to be on as the good kid. I was the one that had to get the good grades. I was the one that had to not cause trouble. I was the one that had to really make sure and sort of kind of, put on a good face for the family. It had its rewards. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a bad thing, or not necessarily a good thing for that matter either. But it did lend me to tending to overfunction for others in order to kind of find my place or feel like I belonged.
Yeah.
It led to me being kind of extra sensitive to all the emotions in the room. And still, even today, I'd characterize myself as sort of a border collie. Whenever I'm leading a team, I automatically know who's kind of not feeling it, who's left out, feeling responsible for making sure everybody's
happy,
coming together, moving together. Yeah. That sort of anxious or ambivalent kind of style of attachment, for me, led to both some strengths that I can sort of leverage into the work that I do, but also some weaknesses that when I'm in a kind of a stressful or an environment that isn't functioning well, I will overfunction on behalf of others, and that's just something I've learned about myself. Give me another 200 years, maybe I'll be able to unplug the wiring a little bit. But I just know at this point that once I figure out if I am in that environment, I'm not going to do well. So being in a place where I can do well is part of my own recovery path in that regard.
I like how you phrase that.
Yeah.
Okay. So research says that addiction hijacks the survival reinforcement circuit. Could you break that down if you can?
Sure.
And how does the old brain overpower the new brain in addiction?
Sure. Yeah. Maybe the simplest way to talk about it is that we all have urges, needs, hunger, thirst, sleep. We get lonely and bored and we seek out companionship. Those urges and needs come from a good place. The different substances and processes that, contribute to addictive behaviors effectively hijack those urges, so that instead of feeling hunger, for instance, I might instead seek out a bottle of alcohol, because it's got plenty of calories, no nutrients necessarily, but it'll slake my hunger, it'll satisfy my thirst, it'll meet whatever craving that is. And so over time, the old brain, what we might call the body mind, the whole nervous system, becomes wired to experience these basic urges as cravings for a particular substance or process. So part of the recovery work is really realigning that old brain and those signals with the actual needs that the body is expressing. And that can be incredibly difficult for people because, especially in those early stages, when folks are in post-acute withdrawal and they're having a craving for their substance of choice, it can literally feel like you're dying. It can literally feel like, somebody's holding you underwater and you can't breathe, and the only thing that's going to save you is whatever your substance of choice is. So in treatment, teaching folks how to kind of surf those urges, sitting with them as they kind of, get over the hump on that craving.
Yeah.
And just providing hope for people that it's not this way forever. This is just your body and your mind kind of relearning how to be in the world without your particular substance or process. That's a huge part of recovery. And yeah, that all comes from those basement structures in the kind of the lower brain, the midbrain, that are in control of appetite, sleep, temperature regulation in the body, all those different things that keep us alive. So yeah, that's, in a lot of ways, that's probably the most deadly aspect of substance use, is because our bodies get tricked. We ignore the things that we actually need in favor of the substances, and we'll, outside of any sort of intervention, we'll use until we die.
And can you explain for people who may not be as close to addiction why specifically it's so hard for somebody to, or how about this? You mentioned that someone feels like they're dying. I'll give you an example. I was on the phone with my father recently talking about a very old friend that he's had for most of his life, at least since he's been married.
Yeah.
Early 20s, and he's now, mid 80s. About how he still smokes and how he has all of these contributing factors to poor health now because he cannot give up smoking. And my dad has a past of drinking, which he doesn't anymore, and he also smoked. And so, boomer generation. He said on the phone, I just don't understand why he doesn't quit. I did.
Sure.
And so for people who don't understand the neurochemical response that's going off in your brain, I think the statistic is like 48 to 72 days straight. If you've been drinking, the likelihood of you being able to withdraw doesn't even kick in for another, I think, like 28 days or something crazy. Like the real withdrawal symptoms don't really even kick in yet. It takes that long for your body. And then, of course, you're going to feel like you're dying.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, every substance is a little different. And, depending on the pattern of use, whether it's occasional, regular, heavy, light, whatever it is, the body adapts.
Yeah.
The body sort of creates its own response to the substance or the process, and in order to kind of survive, for the organism to survive.
Yeah.
When that substance or process is removed, the body goes through a readaptation process. And oftentimes we talk about withdrawal in phases as sort of the acute phase, whatever it takes for the person to get through kind of the initial discomfort or danger in some cases with alcohol or with benzodiazepines or with fentanyl.
Yes.
And being able to medicate, for a few days or a week or whatever it is that they need to kind of get over the hump for that.
Yeah.
And that can vary, from substance to substance. I know in class we talked about how cannabis and cannabinoids can stay in the body for a very long time.
Yeah.
Could be 4 to 6 weeks for a chronic heavy user to get through that period. Granted, it's not going to be as life-threatening as alcohol. But there is an end to that acute withdrawal phase. But then there's the post-acute phase, which can last for weeks, for months, sometimes even for years.
And what does that look like? Yeah.
It varies from person to person. But kind of like we talked about earlier, the nervous system is re-regulating itself. For somebody whose nervous system has been, let's say, adjusted due to opioids sort of chronically in the system, there's going to be a hypersensitivity to pain, for instance. There's going to be emotional lability, difficulty sort of regulating the emotions as those opioid neurons in the brain and in the body sort of readjust to life without an exogenous opioid coming in. For somebody with chronic stimulant use, methamphetamine or cocaine or something like that, there's going to be an extended period of what's called anhedonia. Just difficulty having any sort of positive feeling or interest or enjoyment in anything in life because the drug has caused those dopamine neurotransmitters to really adapt to a heavy load of the drug. And so it just takes time for folks to, feel normal, is what we say. Now that a lot of those symptoms can be alleviated medically, with psychiatric medications or with diet and exercise, with supplements, all those sorts of things. But oftentimes when we talk about post-acute withdrawal, we say this is, it's really important in this period to fake it till you make it. Find things that you used to do that were enjoyable and do them even if they're not enjoyable right now. Go to meetings, connect with people socially, even if you don't want to be around people. All of those things are helping to re-regulate the nervous system so that as you come out of this post-acute phase, you have connections, you have support, you have things that you're already doing that will start to feel good.
I worked with a lot of people who had lived experience as addicts, specifically meth. And anhedonia was like very rampant with just about everyone that I worked with. And they had been in recovery, sometimes for 8-10 years already. But I will say that when you come from a history of addiction where maybe you didn't always prioritize yourself or know how self-care worked or even self-love, that nurturing aspect on the other side is also elongated as well and contributes maybe to the anhedonia in the sense that if you cared so little about yourself to be treating yourself in this way by soothing yourself with an addictive substance, that it's really hard to also learn to care for yourself on the other side in recovery too. So I feel like the two contribute, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. One contributes to the other.
No, absolutely. I remember, actually there have been multiple clients, but this version of the story kind of sticks out for me about, it was a person that had their first cocaine bump at, I think it was like 12 or 13.
Yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah. And they said it was the first time they actually ever felt like they belonged.
Yes.
They shared this memory of just, looking up at the clouds, laying on the grass, and just feeling like I'm connected now.
Yeah.
I'm here. I can show up finally.
Yeah.
So for a lot of folks, especially when substance use starts early or some sort of gambling or any sort of other kind of behavior gets going early, that becomes the way for that person to feel good.
Well, it rewires your brain.
Yeah, no, exactly. I remember in my early days when I was doing gambling treatment, there was an individual that had been raised in a culture where gambling was, normal. It was kind of expected from childhood on, and had developed, a really big struggle with. I think it was probably either craps or roulette. It was, in any case, casino games.
Yeah.
And in the early days of recovery, they said that they felt like they had been kicked out of heaven, was the word, the phrase they used. They'd been kicked out of heaven. They could no longer go back to the kind of the blissful realm that they had previously inhabited. And they didn't know kind of who they were or how to be
Without
in
it.
the world outside of it. Yeah. And so that was the recovery journey for this person.
Especially when, your brain doesn't fully develop until you're age 23 to 25.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start a substance in your teenage years or even earlier than that, preteen, the chemical makeup of your brain is completely altered as well. So, speaking from my own experience, I think I know the first time that I drank alcohol, I was 13, probably 13. And I had access to it because I had two sisters that were much older than I was. And even though my father, I think I mentioned this in the class, was a DEA agent and raised us to not touch it, it was still available in the house.
Sure.
So, whether it was peer pressure or wanting to be cool or just being curious or wanting to push off the control of my parents, whatever that might be, a mix of all of that, starting that early certainly provoked a response of being able to then treat myself when I needed to numb myself from any pain.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was also your secret, wasn't it?
It was absolutely a secret.
Yeah, yeah. It was yours. It was your thing that
Yeah.
nobody else knew about or could take away. It was, you kind of knew how to take care of yourself. And so probably there was a measure of kind of power or independence or thrill. I don't know. I mean, probably a lot of different things that were sort of wrapped up in that early experience with alcohol.
Absolutely.
But like you say, being able to reliably feel better if you're feeling doubts about yourself, if you're feeling hurt by, what other people are saying, all of that, and that becomes your go-to, then that's kind of what you do. It's the hammer that you use that starts making every problem look like that nail, doesn't it? Right? Yeah. And,
I love that.
Yeah. And a big part of, adolescence and young adulthood, a big part of sort of growing up and that brain development and all the rest is filling out that toolbox, figuring out all those other ways that we can cope with our problems and, relate to other people and find meaning and purpose in life. And so when we find that one thing and don't kind of go beyond it, that kind of puts a hard stop on our development. And that's stuff that we have to pick up later on as we get into recovery.
Yes. Yeah. I think for me, I felt very unseen. So it was easy, like you said, to keep it private or keep it secret because there was so much else going on in my family with my older two sisters that I kind of slid under the radar in that regard. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lost child in the Weg Shelter Cruise model. Yeah,
it was definitely the lost child.
No, I did the same thing. It was, as long as I was looking good and just, not around when the drama happened.
Yep.
That's, seen but not heard.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's kind of how we survive. Yeah, and those roles become very important to kind of who we are within our family and as we move out into the world, to kind of our identity as we relate to others.
Yeah.
And it can take a lot to shift that.
Yes. So I remember turning to alcohol and marijuana, not to party necessarily, but to definitely soothe. What is the link between trauma and that obsessive drive to do it again?
Yeah. So, yeah, and we talked about this in class. One of the pieces that trauma, or I should say chronic stress, really, and trauma is a form of sort of chronic,
Yes.
sort of reactivating stress
Yes.
that we'll feel, is to sort of increase that salience of anything that is rewarding, which is to say that we drink or we use in order to feel normal, in order to feel regulated. It's not necessarily to have fun or to party or to, even to socially connect, although those may be kind of secondary reasons.
Mm-hmm.
For folks who have chronic stress or trauma and are using substances, they do it in order to cope. They do it in order to get through the day, is really what it is.
Yeah. Is it true that people with trauma have a harder time with the stop switch in the brain, and what makes it so hard to quit even when we want to?
Well, getting back to that old brain and its course of development, it comes online, pretty much from birth. All of those instinctive reactions that we have, not just fight, flight, or freeze, but,
And fawn, my
fawning.
favorite.
Yes, exactly. And there are a whole bunch
My
of others I'm
personal
forgetting
favorite.
now, but yeah, conditioned responses that we have in order to just survive. Those are online immediately from the moment that we're born. And we rely on those, throughout our lives. Sometimes I've talked about those as being sort of software version 8.0. We've got all the bugs worked out. That system is doing exactly what it does, and it's kept, different life forms alive throughout the course of evolutionary history. Humans are maybe not completely unique, but we have an enlarged cortex compared to many other animals that develops a lot later. This is the thinking part of the brain, the reasoning part of the brain. The part of the brain where we, make decisions, really. And it takes time for that to develop. And it takes a kind of a non-stressful environment, a nurturing community, opportunities to learn and to grow and to change. And yeah, like you said, that region of the brain doesn't fully develop, really, I've heard, until probably even 28 or 30, when we really can sort of internalize that sense of, this is my life path, this is where I'm going. And, substances or processes can kind of put a brake on that development. So, those early coping mechanisms, if we learn early on to grab a bottle or take a hit or get a pill to be able to cope, that is always going to be with us. That becomes a learned behavior that is just sort of part of those old brain habit forming structures. And they don't go away. In fact, there's a lot of interesting research now looking at how those early experiences sort of impair later decision-making processes. That when faced with a trigger or a cue, the decision-making parts of the brain, the cortex, literally just go offline. And the individual goes right back into whatever that old habit is, no matter how many years it's been. Which is why we talk about the importance of identifying and managing those triggers and cues, being able to surround oneself with supportive people, and why we really focus in treatment on a recovery plan that accounts for the possibility that we aren't going to know every single or be able to control for every single situation. And do what we need to do to get back on track if and when it happens that the old brain takes over and we go back into that old behavior.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm taking a minute to catch up.
Oh, that's all good.
Do you feel that well, I guess you've spoken to this. Do you feel that emotionally charged memories have become hardwired into the brain? Can you explain how past pain drives present behavior, especially for those in recovery?
Yeah, it's, I mean, past pain inspires coping, and the coping becomes compulsive if we don't find a way to work with it that resolves it. The same can be said of intense pleasure as well. Oftentimes for folks that develop a gambling problem, there may not be trauma, there may not be any sort of lack necessarily in life, but that first big win, especially at an early age, and that can look like anything. That can look like going to the arcade and getting all those tickets, at the whatever the Chuck E. Cheese game is that you're playing, right? Or just sitting down at the slot machine once and hitting the jackpot and coming out with a significant amount of money that you didn't have prior to that moment. Those dopamine influenced memories, those pleasure induced memories, become a deep part of the nervous system, of the old brain, the habit forming brain. And those memories don't go away, which is to say every time there's, and I've worked with gamblers that have talked about this, that, forever after, when they encounter a machine or a casino or whatever the game is that they play, that thought pops in, I could win again.
Yes.
I could win again.
Yeah.
And yeah, like folks that, maybe have developed compulsive coping with alcohol and they get in recovery, any sort of discomfort, it becomes the go-to. It's like, I could feel okay again.
Yeah.
This would work
I know
for
this
me.
works.
This will work for me.
Yeah.
And it's not even a conscious thought necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just,
You're
it's
being overridden.
Yeah. Well, if you think about the habit part of the brain, the dorsal striatum, this is the part of the brain where you learn to walk, you learn to ride a bike, you learn to, perfect your golf swing or play a musical instrument or whatever it is. Those things don't go away. Once you learn them for life. You don't forget to walk. You don't forget to
ride a bike.
Yeah, exactly. It might get a little rusty if you haven't played the piano in a while, but it comes right back when you sit down at it. And in the same way, if I learn to cope through, taking a drink, that doesn't go away. It's always going to be there. And so anytime I'm triggered, that thought just is immediately there. And oftentimes the behavior is automatic. I have to, literally stop myself from reaching for that drink or from, going to the dealer's house.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Looking at my own story of abuse, body image issues, abandonment, and family trauma, how might those layers have made me more susceptible to addiction?
Yeah, I don't know the whole of your story, but I think it's probably safe to say that there's a certain amount of vigilance that's required for you to kind of stay in recovery, that there are probably some practices that you need to have in place that are non-negotiable, that you do every day regularly. Mm-hmm. Possibly even a person or people, a support community that you have of folks you can go to when things are getting rough. It could be that there are certain places or people that you just cannot associate with or be around. There may be certain, like we talked about, kind of habits that sort of, you know, take you down that winding path that seem innocuous enough just at first glance. I remember one client that talked about making their bed every day as kind of being an important recovery behavior, because when they didn't, it led to other things that then led to substance use. So stuff that we might not even think of that would be important that you might be doing just because it provides that extra layer of protection against going down those paths.
So having good boundaries.
Good boundaries. Good boundaries and good relationships both. Folks who will respect the boundaries and that you can still stay connected to. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I would say a certain amount of self-discipline or self-awareness.
Yeah, I mean, that took a while. And yes, you don't know all of my story, but I may have mentioned this in class that through my second DUI, I had mandatory therapy, or I worked with a social worker for I think a year group work, and then another, I think a total of 18 months individual. I don't remember. I got max sentencing on everything. And so I am so grateful for the woman that I was assigned to, because she's pretty heavily the reason why I do the work that I do now. I would say that she had been doing it for so long, similar to you, and she wouldn't take any shit, and she was so brutally honest with me. And there was a significant amount of denial that I was in, because if I admitted the truth, then I had to admit that the choices that I had made, or the relationship that I was in, or the life that I was trying to hold up on the outside looked really great, but I was crumbling inside that foundation. And I wasn't ready to admit it all on my own. So I agree with you, having the right people, having the right support. I haven't really looked at, that didn't come up in the abstinence paper, but I haven't really looked at every single thing that I do during the day. So I'll think on that. But yeah, I mean, I guess I have better practices that are supportive of soothing me. Like you said, you could work on something for another 200 years. And it made me chuckle, because I could work on myself, from here until the time I die, whenever that might be, and still not be perfect, still have certain things that I'm working on or working towards or getting better at in myself. But I would say that at this point, I definitely have let go of a lifestyle that I had, let go of a partner that I had, let go of even the stress of a career. My career is very different. Those were all absolutely contributing.
Sure.
And then, the freedom of not, in addition, trying to raise a child through all of that. For the most part, as a single parent. So my life has in some ways gotten a lot simpler or easier, but that took time, and it also took better choices, and it took knowing myself more, and it took strength to let things go or recognize that they weren't serving me.
And I might add that, and this is a guess, but I would guess that it took hope as well.
Yes, hope for a better life, or
A different life.
a different life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The possibility, even in the midst of struggle, that things can be different, can be better, can change.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Not giving up hope.
Yeah. and my guess is that that counselor of yours, for as brutally honest or as, you know,
She was
as
so
kind
great. She
of,
was black. She was
yeah,
amazing.
also held out that possibility for you. It's like, I'm not going to give up on you, you know?
Yeah. Well, she just was basically she was like, Andrea, you're full of shit.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
most of the time. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And also group work was incredibly powerful too for anyone. I jokingly refer to even being in our program as group therapy,
Oh,
but
yeah.
group work was so incredible because when you show up for whatever part in your circumstances you might be, whatever substance you might be addicted to. For me, it was alcohol. I showed up and I remember being that, you're still so emotionally flooded by your circumstances. So whether that be angry at the fact that it happened or who contributed to it or why it was their
Yeah.
fault or everything, is the power is totally outside of you and you're completely
Yep.
focused on how everybody else has
Mm-hmm.
ruined your life, right?
Yep.
And then to fast forward a couple
Mm-hmm.
months in when you're showing up begrudgingly
Mm-hmm.
for months on end because you don't want to be there, and
Yep.
that starts to soften because the information is starting to seep in and
Mm-hmm.
you're starting to get it,
Yeah.
and then you see other people show up on day one,
Mm-hmm.
and the perspective of, oh shit, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's where I
Yep.
used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're
Mm-hmm.
gentle and compassionate with the people who show
Mm-hmm.
up because you're like,
Yeah.
give it some time and that'll
Yep.
ease up. But
Yeah.
yeah, group work can be very powerful in that regard, in my opinion, just on that reflection back.
Yeah. Yeah. Having other people that have been there, or that have that are where you were,
Yeah.
and being able to offer and receive honest reflections about what's going on. That sort of process work is vital to recovery. And we create a safe space for that to happen within treatment. But ideally, when we move out of treatment, we've got those people in our lives that will do the same thing with us or for us. That's probably the challenge because going from a contained environment to one that's not so contained.
Especially if you didn't have the support to begin with, which is why you were drinking to begin with,
Exactly.
or an addict to begin with.
You
If
got
you
it.
didn't have the great support system to begin with,
That's right.
it's very hard to then step out of recovery or step into recovery, I should say,
Yeah.
and cultivate that. And I think that's why it's so easy to then fall off that wagon and go right back to it, go back to what you know.
Yep. Yeah. No, exactly. Sheldon Kopp I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a existential therapist, but he developed what he called the partial register of 238 eternal truths. And two of them right next to each other. One says childhood is a nightmare. And the other one is it's really stinking hard to be a grown-up on your own adult. Both of those things are true.
Yep.
It sucks to take responsibility for all of those pieces in your life that are yours, that you're really the only one that can own. And yes, there are very good reasons why you haven't been able to do that. Nonetheless, the responsibility is still yours.
True.
Yep.
From a clinical lens, what role does early gender conditioning and generational shame play in how women self-medicate with substances?
Wow. Not being in a woman's body, I can't speak on that from the inside, but I can say that the cultural norms in at least where I'm situated, which is, Oregon, the United States of America, kind of the Western tradition, there's a lot of mixed messages for women right now about who they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to be in the world. We expect in a lot of ways, perfection from women, particularly from mothers. We expect women to be sort of the emotional caregivers for men, to be sort of the fulfillment of whatever needs they might have. We have a lot of just expectations around women, and if they fall short in any way, our culture judges pretty intensely the women that are not meeting up to the standard. And women will judge each other and will judge themselves by
For
those
sure.
standards as well. I think Brené Brown does a great job of sort of unpacking this in, I'm forgetting the book, Daring Greatly, I think, where she talks about how, and, you know, she was born and raised in Texas, so really, you know, very carefully defined gender roles, and how people were just, you know, judging each other by these impossible standards. Women that were supposed to be, you know, close confidants and friends, just dissing on each other. And the amount of shame that sort of builds up over time with that. You get to feeling like you're on your own. And so, yes, of course, you're going to, you know, get the, you know, the spouse off to work, get the kids off to school, pull the drapes, and get the vodka bottle out, right? You know, that's because it's what you have to do in order to survive.
It reminds me of that movie When a Man Loves a Woman. Did you ever see that?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an oldie.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on at length about men as well. There are other kind of the man box and the gender sort of constraints that they feel as well, that lead to substance use. But a big part of recovery is unpacking those gender roles and sort of evaluating what's useful and what's not. You know, I'll put a plug in for the group Women in Recovery, or Women for Recovery. I think they still have a 16-step process. You know, there's the 12-step in kind of the Alcoholics Anonymous, and theirs is a little bit longer, and it's all about empowering and reclaiming and taking back and owning, rather than acceptance or surrender or letting go. Very, very different path, and many women that become a part of that community find it really, really helpful to focus on that sort of empowering as opposed to surrendering in order to find their way to recovery.
Wow, I didn't even know about that. I wish I would have.
Yeah, well, it's still there. You know?
No, I mean, like, in my 30s.
Yeah. No, sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, what a different experience.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because, I you know, I was also required through our program to go to a couple of AA and NA and those meetings, but I've also been in the past, and I won't say the thing I guess the thing I disagree with is that it's completely abstinence based, and it doesn't leave a lot of room for what you would refer to as falling off the wagon or making a mistake, or that shame that is involved with if you stay in that program and then you're not able to comply to the rules, so to speak. So coming from an empowering experience as opposed to letting go or pushing away from, right?
Yeah. It's, I mean, you know, everybody kind of resonates with different things. And,
For sure.
you know, for a lot of folks, the 12-step tradition is, you know,
Make or break.
Well, the only requirement is the desire for recovery. So, you know, a lot of folks, you know, they keep coming back no matter how many times they use, or even if they're kind of constantly using. The hope is that, you know, at some point they can kind of find that space where they can let it go and keep moving. But, yeah.
Yes, but you don't get your coin.
Yeah, well,
you don't get your gold star.
Yeah, that's... Well, I
gotta
just
start all over again with your days.
You know, 2 days ago, I got to almost 90 days on my Wordle score. You know, I've 90 days of getting it right, and then I missed a word, and now I'm back to 0. And that feels crappy. But it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, to have a recovery path where you can, incorporate your learning and be surrounded by people that will work with you, and where it's not necessarily being shamed for a lapse, and being forced to sort of start over again. Yeah, that's something that a lot of folks resonate with in Women in Recovery or Smart Recovery, for instance.
Yeah.
A lot of these other groups will encourage more of a, you fell off the horse, let's get you back on the horse and get going again. So
how long does it really take for the brain to rewire, I can't get that word out, after years of substance use, and what makes recovery sustainable?
I guess it depends on what you think about sort of rewiring. I mean, those early experiences aren't going away. Always will be there to some degree. And yeah, what I guess the question is, what's the result we're looking for? Is there some sort of perfection out there that we're ideal, that we're holding for ourselves about, this is recovery, and once I get there, I'm going to be fine, everything's going to be perfect? No, we're relational beings. We're on a journey, from the moment we're born to the moment we die. We're constantly changing and growing and developing. And I mean, really, I would say that's the very nature of recovery, is changing, growing, and developing. That addictive habits keep us kind of locked in this cycle where we can't do those things. And so, yeah, if we're not as perfect as we want to be, or as, sort of completely realized as we feel like we should be, if we feel like we've got work to do, well, take a number and get in line. That's where we're all at, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. In some way or another, whether it's like doom scrolling on your phone or,
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, there's so many ways to be addicted.
You bet. Yeah. I gotta take
and
another
you can
look at
switch out, just because my dad no longer smokes and he no longer drinks, it didn't point out on the phone that he does gamble.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yep. No, of course.
Yeah.
And my caffeine intake has started to ratchet up again. So I was like, okay, I should probably, just have 1 cup of coffee instead of 2 this morning. Yeah, exactly. All those things. So.
And I think, remind me the phrase, but I feel like you used this in class, which is, and I've heard it referred to as well, but it's like, whenever you're using that substance, you're just borrowing time from the future.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
I heard somebody talk about smoking as sort of shaving years off the back end. That, whatever you're doing now may not have immediate consequences, but, it's coming.
But you're also stealing, I guess what I'm referring to, and maybe I'm articulating it incorrectly, but you're referring the reference to, let's say, smoking marijuana is very popular, especially in Oregon, now that it's legalized.
Yeah.
And so when you're taking a hit or a drag, you are borrowing dopamine from your future, right? It's like you're going to pay for that eventually. You may be getting that dopamine hit right now, but you deplete yourself so much that eventually that's going to catch up. And that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Our neurotransmitters, I mean, when we're not kind of altering them chemically, really are working sort of in balance with everything else. So we get, a certain neurotransmitter when we wake up in the morning that gives us some energy and gets us going. Get another one in the evening that, prompts us to fall asleep. We get that little bump of dopamine when we enjoy a sunset or a conversation with a good friend. And then when we use a substance or a process that kind of jacks up that experience, those are neurotransmitters we're using now that we'll need to restore in the future.
Mm-hmm.
If I, go on a meth run for a night, I'm going to need to sleep in order to restore myself. That's just, simple logic. And for a lot of folks that, use substances in order to be productive or in order to kind of get through the day, they're sort of, that's the thing. They're just sort of pushing that line off further and further.
Yeah.
And and to loop back, that's what we call post-acute withdrawal, is those neurotransmitters trying to rebalance and replete and restore.
Mm-hmm.
That's for post-acute withdrawal, that future is now. It becomes inescapable.
Yeah. What are some practices or therapies that you've seen successfully help people reconnect with their stop switch?
I think the process of treatment is fundamentally the same, even if the practices are a little different. The first and probably most important process is being able to have a relationship with somebody that you trust. And in therapy, that's going to be ideally a therapist or a treatment team or whoever that is, that you feel really understands you, that really is responsive to your needs and your struggles, and that does hold that hope and that encouragement for you. Probably the simplest set of interventions are those that help you establish, mindfulness or grounding, that help bring an individual into a place where they can just center themselves. Take a deep breath or a few deep breaths to relax, to engage the parasympathetic nervous system that allows us to kind of get our feet on the ground, think about our choices, all those sorts of things. That doesn't mean sitting on your butt on a cushion for hours a day.
Yeah.
That can mean just a couple deep breaths and just attending to kind of where I am right now.
Yeah. Sometimes more than a couple deep breaths.
yeah, as many as you need. Yeah, or just setting a timer and sitting your butt in a chair and waiting until that whatever it is over.
Yeah.
It looks different for everybody,
Yeah.
but opening your awareness to your experience and not pushing it away. Sort of doing the opposite.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's been referenced a lot in this past week, both, I had somebody in the previous podcast talking about softening.
Yeah.
Softening. Dr. Henderson calls it breathe and stepping in.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, I would say something like opening, softening, and then taking the leap.
Yeah.
Jumping into the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that space, there's all sorts of different tools for being able to name your feelings, for instance, to identify thoughts and to be able to release them, to reshape my personal narrative in ways that are empowering rather than disempowering.
How would you go about doing that?
I think probably, the most common narrative switch that we make, especially for folks that are struggling with trauma and addiction, is helping folks understand for themselves how their behaviors help them survive. I remember at a conference hearing an indigenous man, I can't remember which tribe he was from, talk about how, alcohol literally saved his life for a period of time. He said, I am who I am, but there are people who don't want me to be who I am. So I disappeared into this bottle for a period of time. And when I found supportive people, I was able to come out at the other side and connect with them so that I could be who I actually am.
Huh.
So, understanding, I think, the addiction journey as just part of the journey. Understanding whatever the gifts are, for the experiences that we had, that allowed us to get to where we are, and to maybe even find gratitude if possible. So that's kind of what I talk about when I talk about sort of narrative therapy, or the narrative interventions, those sorts of things. And then there's looking at the future. I mean, for so many of us that struggle with addiction or trauma, our horizon is like right here.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's the next fix. It's the next whatever. I gotta deal with this right now. And that's, anybody that's living with chronic stress, I think, the culture that we live in, that's as much as we can do typically. And so we don't have the time to think about, what do I really want in life? What are my goals? What are my values? What's important to me? Where do I want to be in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years? And those questions can be really scary if you haven't thought about them before.
Yeah.
So providing the space, the tools, the supportive environment for folks to kind of step off the edge of that particular cliff and just see, what it's like to imagine a future where things might be different. Anyway, that's a whole grab bag of interventions there.
No,
But
I loved it. It's
yeah.
good. And especially because someone listening or watching may not be familiar, or as familiar as you and I are, with those techniques or strategies.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
What keeps you hopeful about the future of addiction treatment?
Oh my gosh. People in recovery keep me hopeful. Encountering folks that, are on the journey one way or another, and hearing their stories, sharing their struggles, working together. One of the wonderful things about Central City Concern is that they're a second chance employer, and they bring in folks that, were formerly clients to, to do some of the work alongside, everybody else that's employed there. And in a lot of ways, that's, it's kind of a vital piece of the journey, is being able to sort of pay forward whatever it is that you've done. And, whatever's been given to you. And the effect that has on the culture around it, I find to be both magnetic and extremely troubling. It's extremely troubling to folks that have their own kind of addictive patterns, whether or not it's substance related. Those people, why are they so happy? Those people, they shouldn't be like that. Look at how awful they have it. Look at how terrible their lives are or were. And it creates this real dissonance for people that, maybe haven't walked that journey.
Yeah.
But also that joy that people kind of manifest when they get into recovery, that serenity, the hope that they kind of carry with them. I find that that's really magnetic for a lot of folks that maybe haven't spent a lot of time with people in recovery. That it's like, wow, how do you get that? I want some of that. How do I, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
So
it's inspiring.
Yeah. So there's a real tension, I think, in the culture around people who live in recovery. Wanting it and not wanting it, feeling magnetized to them, and at the same time feeling like they're a threat. So a lot of confusion. But at the same time, there's a very real culture of people that are starting to kind of live this life and that are transforming our society, I believe, in a way that over the long haul is going to be very positive.
If you could say one thing to the version of me who picked up a drink or a joint, what would it have been?
I get it. I totally get it. Yeah.
I love
And
that answer.
yeah. And yeah. Not gonna give up. How about that?
Okay, you answered that. You've worked in both clinical and educational settings.
Mm-hmm.
What keeps you invested in this work year after year?
Well, I think the thing that I talked about is watching folks in recovery kind of make it their path. Folks that might start out as peer mentors that then go and get their certified alcohol and drug counselor certification, and then maybe get their bachelor's degree in social work and then their master's degree, and that keep finding ways to sort of expand their scope, their helping scope, and that keep learning and growing and changing themselves. The whole practical side of that is that we build a workforce that can do the work that is really urgently needed. But I think for me, the joy in that is just encountering people that that are so grounded in their stories and so passionate about what they want to do and about the future they want to help co-create. Yeah, it's energizing for me. I might come off of a really hard day at work, but to come to class and teach, it's like, oh, this is great. Yeah, thank you for, making my week. And now I feel like I can keep going again.
Yeah.
So
reminding you why you do it.
Yeah, and I learned from the students, honestly. It's been 17 years for me, and a lot has changed in the field. And so the experiences, the language, the knowledge that they're just bringing in as human beings is stuff that I benefit from as well, and that I can pay forward then to my staff and to the clients that we serve. Yeah.
Was there ever a point in your life when you saw addiction close up, either in yourself, your family, or your community, and you thought, this is what I want to help people through? Was there a specific moment?
I think probably several. The one that I think really comes to mind for me is having a family member that struggled with problem gambling, and and this was, I think, toward the end of my grad school time when I was still visiting some of the different meetings that were around, and visited a Gam-Anon meeting for the very first time, and just wept my entire way home. It's like, oh my gosh, this is me. And it's like, having felt helpless, I think, watching this family member just kind of continue to spiral, and finally realizing that I was in that spiral as well, that, they weren't alone, I wasn't alone, we were all part of this same dynamic, and realizing that we could get out of it together, I think. For me, that was transformative. And there were several. I continued going back to Gam-Anon and coming home and just weeping after every meeting every week, just
wow,
because I realized that there was hope for both of us. I think there was possibility for both of us to find our own versions of recovery.
Is that family member in recovery?
Yep, you bet. Yeah.
And did you have influence over that?
It's really hard to say. I mean, like I said, my whole family of origin kind of got into recovery at the same time. Each of us kind of on our own journey. And
that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because not everyone's family does that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I remember just feeling incredibly grateful. It was, I think it was summer. My son was about 8, and went to kind of pick this person up, and we were going to ride home and visit, mom and dad for the first time together. And, it'd been several years. And, I hopped in the car, and he gave my son a Coke, and, started chatting with him, getting to know him really for the first time. When we got to home, they were out back, shooting hoops and, talking trash and, just kind of having a good time. And it was like, yeah, this is what I wanted. This is what I had hoped for. And, to kind of have a glimpse of that. And then just to sit down around the dinner table and sort of explore all the different things that we had learned individually along the way. That was amazing. That was, I think, probably transformative for all of us. But for me, it was like, I can do this. This is possible. It doesn't have to be about me. It can be about us. I can just be part of the journey. I don't have to be the one who sort of waved their magic wand and made recovery happen for this person or that person or whatever. It can just be as simple as sharing a period of time together, walking a journey and learning about each other and being on the same side of whatever an issue is and thinking about it together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Many people avoid working in addiction because it's messy and complicated.
Mm-hmm.
What made you lean in instead of look away?
I think probably the same thing that any person kind of feels when they've reached that bottom or the end of their rope or whatever it is. It's like, I don't have any choice but to change now for myself. All my assumptions, kind of my ways of being in the world. I said when I went to grad school, I had both a professional and personal curiosity about why people changed and why they got stuck. I had been in a stuck place for a pretty decent amount of time in certain ways and had to let loose of a lot of things in order to live the life that I wanted to live. So it wasn't necessarily recovery by, the kind of the standards of somebody in an addiction. But there was a process for myself where the old magic wasn't working anymore. And to continue to try to pretend like it would, would just be a wasted life. And so, yeah, literally not having any other choices if I wanted to have the life that I wanted to live, and having that change for myself, experiencing it from the inside.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
That lived experience. Yeah.
Exactly. And then simply the desire to, not even pay forward, but just to connect with folks that are also in that place of complexity or suffering or ambivalence or whatever you want to talk about. Just, if for no other reason, to kind of help them know that, right now it's okay. It's a mess, yes, and it will probably continue to be a mess, but let's just be together in the mess and find our way through it right now. I think that's the thing that keeps me coming back in this field.
What have you learned about yourself from doing this work, especially working with people who carry a lot of pain, shame, and resilience?
Well, maybe just to say it another way, it's not about me. Right? I think a lot of us who, get into a helping field, and that could be education, that could be healthcare, That could be just about anything. We do it because we want to make a difference. There's a measure of ego involved in that. And,
Sure.
we were talking earlier about moral ambition,
Yes.
the desire to have this huge effect on the world and to kind of, make a difference for so many people. And then we get there and we find out that, it's not that. Whatever the problems are, they're insurmountable, for any one person to do anything about. And a lot of people get out of the field because they hold to that. It's like, I have to be the one to do this. I have to, there's a sense of kind of me being involved in your recovery, your well-being. And I become so invested in that I start crossing boundaries, or I start, manipulating or coercing or, doing things that I really shouldn't in order to feel better about myself helping you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for me, the significant thing is that it's not about me. It can't be about me. It's literally just about having a genuine connection and contact with another person. That's really all that we got.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Everything else is just kind of gravy, but if we've got that, the possibilities are endless, really. And I think that's what I've experienced as being true.
If you had to distill your purpose into one sentence, why you show up for this work, what would it be?
I've got a number of slogans that I kind of rotate through on I have a little kind of reflection table that I sit at in my breakfast nook. And the one that, it's hard. Do I have to choose one?
No.
Okay.
You can mention them all.
Okay. So never give up on anyone or anything. That's one that is regular in the rotation. Quid liberat, whatever sets you free. Nemo sine omnibus, no one without everyone. And then so the one that's up there right now is cut out the navel gazing. It's really easy to kind of get lost in thinking about trying to figure out a problem when really you just have to step into it and, do the dance. Yeah. So there's a few there.
Yeah. It's all good advice. I'd never heard of some of the phrases. Are they Latin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But,
Did you study Latin?
In a previous life, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And Greek and Hebrew and some other things.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, just enough to be dangerous, but
Okay.
yeah. But, yeah, those were some that pulled out of Roman philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you read a lot of Roman philosophy?
Not these days.
Okay, but you have.
Once upon a time, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Stoics were an inspiration.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so these have followed you for a while now.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, whenever I encounter something that kind of resonates with me, I'll write it on a 3x5 card and add it to the stack.
Ah.
And then just sort of go through the rotation.
Okay.
Maybe it changes daily or weekly, a couple weeks, something like that. So.
And that's what grounds you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your share and your wisdom and your philosophy. And also, I appreciate your insight into my journey as well.
Well, thank you for sharing this time with me.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
been an honor and a privilege to be here.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Yes.
Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting this podcast. Your presence here means the world to me, and I'm truly grateful for your time and energy. If this conversation resonated with you or sparked any questions, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from each of you. Your insights, experiences, and curiosities always enrich this space. It's important to remember that trauma, often unseen and unacknowledged, can keep us from living fully in our joy. Through my intuitive healing process, I help release the weight of generational trauma, empowering you to reconnect with your true self and experience life in greater harmony. If you feel called to explore this deeper work, I invite you to book a one-on-one intuitive session or even embark on a personalized journey with a Phoenix Immersion, a 2-day retreat designed to support profound transformation. You can find all the details below. For those who've liked, subscribed, or left comments already, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your engagement means everything, and I'm deeply grateful for the connection we're building in this community. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I'm excited for all the healing and transformation we'll continue to explore together. As always, I'm forever grateful for you, and I cannot wait to see what unfolds next. Take care, and until next time.